Hey, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining our panel today. Trent Shore is here with me. What we're going to do is the CyberSaint team asked us just to give it a couple minutes. They were having some feedback that folks are needing a little bit more time in between sessions to transition. So we are going to start at around 11:02, 12:02 if you're on the East Coast. So in about 60 more seconds, and we'll open this bad boy up and get started. I hope everybody is having a phenomenal day. I believe we're on day 2 of the conference. I know I said in a couple sessions yesterday that I really enjoyed, so I look forward to getting all the feedback. Trent, I don't know if you were able to join anything yesterday. Sorry, Trent. It's that mute button is a little bit different than our Zoom calls. That's my fault.
It was bound to happen.
One more time. I think you've got a couple of systems on your end that have you muted.
I'm thankful that you took time to mute me.
Guys, don't we love technology?
Eloquent thing. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, this isn't your fault. In our sandbox, we were perfect. Absolutely perfect. Let's see if I can unmute you on my end. Let's test it out now. I think you're unmuted.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Brilliant.
Thank you.
You're coming in loud and clear.
This was all planned. We certainly worked in the sandbox, but Madison's idea was that when the attorney starts talking, we definitely need to mute him. So I thank everyone for tuning in. It has been a great session so far, or conference so far. I did sit in on some sessions, great presenters, great content. Certainly we are hoping to continue that tradition. I want to encourage everyone, as you have questions, if you want to chat, Madison and I will both keep an eye on the chat screen here, so feel free to engage with us there. We will do our best to engage with you.
Awesome. Well, as promised, I said that we would start at 11:02, so I guess that was just us working through technical difficulties. So let's just jump into it. So guys, the title of this session you probably already know, but I've got to repeat it here. So navigating uncertainty, Wells notices geopolitical threats, the future of cybersecurity. I think this is a jam-packed that we could do in 2 hours, so we'll get right to it. Trent Shores and I come live from Oklahoma. If you haven't been, come on down. We're a pretty good host. Trent is in Tulsa, but comes from a world of experience. Used to be a former U.S. attorney, prosecuting individuals, nation state actors, large organizations on all things cyber fraud. I'm very excited to have him specifically on this conversation, given the legal implications. My name is Madison Horn. I'm the CEO of a company called Critical Fault. We do all things ethical hacking, digital forensics, and I've been in this space for about 15 years. I also took a short jaunt and operated in the world of politics and ran for U.S. Senate last year. So Trent, are you ready to dive in?
I am ready to dive in. And in case anybody was unclear which one of us was the attorney, I made sure to wear the attorney outfit with my tie. There is a legal component to what we're going to talk about today. Attorneys can play an important role in the cyber world, both for corporate clients, but also in critical incident response. So Madison, looking forward to engaging. And again, thank you to everyone who has joined us.
Awesome. So let's dive in. So let's talk about the crazy cybersecurity landscape in general. You know, we have geopolitical hotspots that are really kind of creating the year of 2022, which I can't believe that we're almost at the end of it. But, you know, we have the conflict that's going on within Russia and Ukraine. We have things bubbling over in Iran. North Africa is kind of getting a little tumultuous. I mean, what are you seeing from or hearing from your own customers as it relates to an uptick in attacks or, you know, problems that they're seeing on the cyber front?
So let's just talk a little bit about, you know, what types of clients we see getting attacked right now. And unfortunately, I think the answer is everyone. The bad actors, the state actors that are out there, whether they are affiliated with a criminal organization or a nation state, are targeting all of American industry. They are targeting American government and various agencies and state agencies and tribal agencies. The breadth of cyber attacks right now transcends industry. Everyone should be on high alert. Madison and I, she mentioned, we're based in the great state of Oklahoma. We are part of the energy epicenter of the United States. We help to drive energy. That is all sorts of energy, I will say. And one of the things that we are seeing is an increase in cyber attacks on critical infrastructure. Whether that is a pipeline company, it could be a utility provider, electric grids, water even. You see foreign state actors targeting, you see them probing. These attacks increased, I believe, from Russian-based or Russian-affiliated entities after the invasion of Ukraine, and you saw the United States begin to engage. But certainly, we have to keep an eye on China as well, an ever-present threat. And that's not just through critical infrastructure and to our national security interests, but also to industry. We know that China is specifically targeting the innovation of Americans. So we are the worldwide leader. When China looks at its R&D budget, it's zero. But you look at their espionage budget and it is unlimited. They rob, they replicate, and then they repeat. And so I think what we're seeing in the legal world as we respond, assist clients in responding to critical incidents, as we help them prepare to better protect their cyber defense structure and their environments, we are seeing right now just continuous probes from foreign nation states, and everyone really needs to be on high alert.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that you did a really great job of like rounding out what and the who. One thing I want to add to that when we talk about the cyber landscape, then we cannot, leave out the word AI. Yes, everyone can hem and haw. Damn it, I said the word AI that you've heard in every single conversation today, but I cannot tell you the number of emails and conversations that I have had on the implications of AI to individuals' businesses, or we've talked about the space of critical infrastructure and what that means for existing defenses. Does that mean that we need to rip out CrowdStrike? Does that mean we need to rip out existing EDR tools? And the answer is no. I hope that is the common response, but AI, what we see, at least what I'm seeing, and Trent, I'll give you some space to answer this as well, is really on the way attackers are leveraging it right now to help reduce the cost and to reduce the amount of sophistication or the amount of training that they're having to take on learning pieces of equipment, whether that be a CrowdStrike or maybe that your work with Sentinel or even a company like Armis, who is also working rigorously to help defend against emerging technology or techniques and tools that are being used by bad actors. Simple things that we're seeing is just being able to easier craft social engineering type of tactics like emails, or being able to pull dossiers about high profile individuals and really being able to customize different types of attacks. That's more on the softer side, but these tools are even able to use or being able to use to actually create the script, to create that payload, and the end user or the attacker isn't even really needed to be that technically savvy to just kind of make an initial foothold. Are you hearing anything, Trent, more on the side of AI? Any additional concerns from a legal perspective, other than big pieces like data privacy and plagiarism?
All of the above, Madison. I think that certainly what we're seeing is criminal organizations. Take Revel for example. They talk about their use of AI, whether it's ChatGPT or some other form of AI, to actually develop new forms of ransomware or malware that they are going to disseminate, seek to integrate into your systems. And that is a real problem, right? I mean, this isn't a Hollywood script where we think Skynet's going to do something on its own and come get us all. This is great, incredible technology that is at this moment being used for malicious purposes. We just heard yesterday the United States Senate talk about how it is going to look at the possibility of regulating artificial intelligence here in the United States, given its impact on industry and government. Appropriate uses, whether or not there needs to be more regulatory oversight. So certainly that is something that we will all want to keep an eye on right now as our elected officials and the government bureaucracy begins to look at regulatory opportunities and perhaps putting limits on the appropriate use, if any, of AI. And of course, there are wonderful benefits to AI. We're seeing it, across industry. But also it comes with great risks. So one of the things I just mentioned, Madison, was regulatory oversight. So in the sense of a segue or a transition, one of the things we said we were going to talk about here as well are Wells notices, the future of cyber. This overlays right across the geopolitical threats that we're seeing. What is it that CISOs are responding to? What is it that government agencies are preparing to defend against? But at the same time, there's regulatory oversight that we're seeing come down from government agencies. Can you talk a little bit about the movement toward government regulatory oversight and specifically touch on the new SEC rules and Wells notices?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you did a great job of just being like, yo, Madison, structure. Guys, Trent Shore and I are good friends, if you haven't noticed. And so we can have conversations in many different directions and have had too many drinks together, having great cyber conversation. So let's get to the basics. Like, what is a Wells notice? I can't tell you the number of times when I've said, when I even just posting this panel, they're like, wait, Wells notice, what the hell is this? So, it's really basic. It's literally just that notification process that charges from a regulator is actually being served to an individual. And a lot of this is around, to your point, Trent, the FEC guidelines that are just coming out. We saw a teaser of those guidances coming out, I believe, what was that, about a month ago? And we're supposed to see a final version, a new version come out in October. And it's really setting the precedent of, what is supposed to be included in any type of disclosure following an incident, what type of mitigating factors have been put into place prior to, say, incident, what type of data, if any data was compromised, what that notice is, basically how long. I believe they've said 4 days after realizing that a company has been breached, then you are supposed to actually disclose that. But it's not just that. It's also requirements that someone like a CISO, it doesn't necessarily have that same title, but a entity, a person that represents the cybersecurity community, that has a world of experience within the cyberspace, sits on the board, which I think this is a big one because we haven't seen this in the past. And it is critical these days that the board is informed, understands the risk from not just a PR perspective, but a financial perspective, and the impacts to the general public of a potential breach. Were there any areas you wanted to bring up? I know you and I have totally different perspectives in the ways and the hows that we research Wells notices and some of the legal compliance pieces.
Sure. So folks know when Madison references some differences in perspective, understand for 18 years, I worked for the United States Department of Justice. And in that role, I was a federal prosecutor, prosecuted any number of violations of federal law, deconstructing criminal organizations. But for a significant part of that time, worked with the men and women in federal law enforcement to protect our national security interests and go after individuals, entities, spies, criminal hackers that would target American interests, both in the private sector and governmental. And what we're seeing now, of course, is regulatory oversight. So when I'm talking about government engagement or oversight here, I'm not thinking about the prosecutors and the law enforcement component, who are seeking to catch the bad guys and hold them accountable or frustrate their efforts or recover monies that were taken. I'm talking about the regulatory oversight and where it is that our regulatory environment is going, which following President Biden's issuance of his new national security memorandum as it pertains to cyber issues, talks about the need for every federal agency to be mindful and thoughtful about what regulatory oversight is needed in the cyberspace realm. And so when we look at this, we're looking at agencies that sometimes don't have the substantive expertise to deal with some of the issues that are being raised. Now, the SEC, for example, has issued new rules, has announced that it will be issuing new rules through a recent vote. I believe the vote was 3-2 by the commissioners. And these are going to require registrants to disclose certain material breaches. And as Madison made reference to, it'll be important what is included in those notices. It'll be included, when a breach is determined to be material versus immaterial, and then what it is that needs to be disclosed to the SEC, and then the actions that will be required to take place after. This is something that not just a cybersecurity team internal within a corporation needs to be mindful of, or even in-house counsel. This is something that I always advise clients is helpful to have external counsel being engaged on any type of critical incident response. The idea here being that any steps taken in the immediate aftermath of a breach, be it just an event versus an incident, is that we are working toward identifying the bad actors and holding them accountable for civil litigation. The idea here is that the decisions made during that time, in coordination with your external counsel, are protected under attorney-client privilege to the extent possible. And remedial actions taken during this time cannot be used against the company. This certainly is a particular concern. Clive has just asked what we think about the determination of materiality. And I do not know Clive, but this was perfect timing. So that is sort of the key question. This is the key component. If you look at, for example, the Transportation Security Administration's recent issuance over the last couple of years of its security directives, it talks a lot about material breaches or material incidents. This is in the world of lawyers, trying to understand what is it that these words mean, because they're really important. Do you err on the side of disclosure to a government agency? Because sometimes those definitions are left open-ended. And it makes sense, right? Because maybe what is material to one company may not be considered material to another. So we are right now in this space where companies and the government are trying to understand what a baseline definition of materiality is. To what extent did the breach get? What information or data was accessed or taken? Were other systems compromised? Or was this maybe just a third-party vendor that got breached and it was some employee's information but didn't touch on our actual network? All of these are factual considerations that go into that definition. I'm thinking of materiality as being something that is more invasive, but I often work with a CISO to have that CISO explain to me what it is that he or she saw as part of the breach, how invasive it was, and then we work together to determine whether or not something was material. And more often than not, we try to err on the side of providing the government the appropriate notice, whether it's the TSA or it's the SEC, as we try to figure out these new rules moving forward. But that's about open conversation and communication.
I love it. I appreciate you calling out the question. For some reason, I'm not even seeing them on my screen, probably because I'm new to this platform. But, you talked about CISOs a lot and you brought them into the conversation. And I think this is an important or a good segue for us to kind of talk about, what type of message this sends to the CISO/security leadership community. And I'm going to take it in one direction. And I'd love for us to go back and forth on this specific this piece, because I've been in several conversations / roundtables of what the implications might be to senior leadership and or to boards. But first of all, let's talk about that disclosure piece, and one of the pieces talking about if, within your annual report, then you actually have to talk about what your risk prevention or risk mitigation strategy is. And it really hasn't defined to any type of level of granularity just yet, as we would expect, given this set of regulatory sets of compliance pieces that are actually still being documented. I guess, do you have any concern to how much an entity discloses about what types of mitigating controls that they're putting in place?
Sure. Less is more. The concern here is that I'm going to provide some sort of notice about what happened, what door was left open, how the bad guys got their foot in, how they accessed it, what we've done to plug that hole. What I'm doing is I'm providing a roadmap to anybody else that may want to seek to exploit a vulnerability, or to explain to them how it is that I patched the vulnerability that was there, so that they can then go and exploit that, perhaps a perceived area of an already weak spot. There is a significant concern, and a legitimate one, from private sector in reporting up to government the extent and details of any particular breach. We know, unfortunately, that our government is also not safe when it from breaches. It has happened not once, not twice, but it's happened multiple times. Just like American private sector, American government agencies are also the targets of cyber attacks consistently and constantly. So certainly, this is something that we are mindful of between council and a CISO. And then if there is a board or a CEO that all are weighing in on this, for how much should we disclose to ensure that we are compliant, but also not providing so much that we're providing a roadmap for how to attack us.
Yeah. So I'll pull on part of the discussions I've been having, and some of the things that you and I talked about before this session, even, I won't say 20 minutes before, then there's the pros and cons here. So I think the pros we've kind of talked about is really the information sharing across industries to ensure that a specific industry like the critical infrastructure space is, kind of sharing how they're protecting the same types of systems, same type of assets, which we know are traditionally so hard to actually lock down. But not just the information sharing on the tactics, but on those risk mitigation pieces. But I appreciate the industry is being held accountable across all industries. And so I'm saying cyber. I appreciate that we have levels of accountability. I appreciate the fact that the government has been doing more and more collaboration with the private sector, more than I've ever seen before. I was so excited to see the number of state agencies that were at DEF CON this year, some of the new hacking villages. One specifically was the policy village at DEF CON. It was fantastic. But a concern that I've been hearing is, going back to the CISO and that leadership community, is what does this mean from a liability perspective? We've seen recent conversations and hearings and trials of, is the CISO going to be the individual who, at the end of the day, is going to have to pay out those fines, put their reputation on the line when, perhaps they did everything that they possibly could to mitigate any type of attack. The common phrases in the cyber community space is like, it's not if, it's when. And so we're just trying to ensure that the crown jewels, the attack that we fear or keep us up at night doesn't happen. So, where are the boundaries between holding a company liable to the CISO liable?
Yeah, this is a great question. And I think it's perhaps answered best with an example.
By an attorney.
What not to do? What not to do? I think probably a lot of us in this space are familiar with the former security chief for Uber, who was found guilty in the Northern District of California federal court after a prosecution by the United States Attorney's Office for failure to disclose a breach. In fact, not just failing to disclose it, but actually taking actions to proactively cover it up. This resulted in obstruction of the federal government from performing its basic duties, from the FTC and being able to investigate this matter appropriately. And we even had allegations I saw in this particular case where the CIO had paid $100,000 to a hacker or to the hacker to keep all of this quiet. This, of course, is disconcerting. This is what not to do. We should not be engaged in actually covering up or frustrating government investigations. So that's what not to do. I think on the compliance and communication side, I always say, if the first time you're meeting the regulator or your local law enforcement, our FBI here in Oklahoma, we have a great cyber team. If the first time you're meeting them is in the middle of an incident response, then something has gone amiss. Something has gone awry. These are individuals, these are people, whether it's a regulator or a law enforcement investigator, that want to proactively reach out, have that established relationship so that when you're in the midst of something and you need assistance or you want clarification to the extent that they will provide it about whether I need to report this, is this on me, is this on the company, you can make those contacts. And of course, it is always best to be able to make those contacts through your counsel, specifically your external counsel. Again, I said there was a role for attorneys in all of this. And often those are the moments where you're going to want an attorney helping you to navigate some of those communications, some of those responsibilities back and forth. But the last thing you want to do is place yourself between the government's effort to do what it is constitutionally charged with doing, and whether it's investigating a breach or assisting with, say, protecting consumers' information. You do not want to get in the way of that. And we've seen, here, at least with the Uber example, what the result of those types of proactive actions are when they are counter to or infringe upon the United States' ability to perform its basic governmental functions and conduct an investigation free of interference.
Yeah. So we have 3 minutes left. And so I'm going to continue to throw a wrench in. And I appreciate the fact that, you emphasize the importance of and ensuring an attorney is right there with you in lockstep, because I do, regardless of our friendship, I do believe the fact that, during an active investigation, then you should be ensuring that everything is being communicated with your attorney to ensure just a client-attorney privilege and to ensure that you're not, oversharing information. And that is for the purpose of, data leakage problems, for extending the breach further, a number of things. But, I think one of the big questions here that, I still don't have an answer for, and I'll be honest, is, because we are seeing a little bit of this liability shift on CISOs, is there concern for us to not have a high quality individuals wanting to take on this level of risk? And so we find a little bit of our senior leadership being diluted or leaving the industry sooner because they're just not willing to take that into their later stages of their career.
Yeah, right. That's a very real concern. It's something I've heard from companies and corporations. Want that CISOs or those interested in taking on that responsibility are seeking more clarification of what their responsibilities would be, or what their, we'll say, culpability would be in the wake of a breach. And for the most part, you're finding CEOs and boards are wanting and willing to work with those individuals, given how important it is. There is not a company culture out there with any of my clients that they want to throw this individual under the bus. I also, of course, take this opportunity when I speak to my clients to share with them, that there's great companies out there like Armis. You mentioned them earlier. Fair disclosure, I represent Armis, and the visibility that they provide into assets is just a sort of a great comforting blanket for a lot of CISOs. And when you have that overlay, it does provide security, helps to ensure compliance. And if something does go wrong, you immediately have a tool like that to be able to assist you. And I think finding that right vendor, sometimes finding those that are on the cutting edge that can help to enhance your security posture, can be really important for a CISO to show that he or she has done everything they can to protect the company that they are charged with securing.
Yeah. And the last poll I'm going to do, because I believe that we are probably going to get booted. I don't know how this works. But, I really appreciate the fact that you said that companies, no one that you've ever worked with, and I would say the same, has a culture of they're wanting to attack a single person. At the end of the day, I think that we all want the same thing, whether that be a cliche or not. Session is starting. This might be the boot. They could have cut me off a little bit ago, but I'll finish my thought. I haven't seen a single company that is looking to target a single individual or holding them accountable. But what I have seen is necessarily the lack of understanding of the importance of cyber, which we are all still trying to champion. And so it is continuously about training and awareness, continuing to be an advocate for the space, and continuing to create a good culture so that we all are building up our defenses in a collaborative manner. So, Trent Shore, I appreciate you jumping in this panel. I know that you are incredibly busy, so thank you so much. I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day. Any parting words you want to leave with our 53 members that look like they are still with us?
Yeah, listen, everyone, reach out to me, reach out to Madison. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can find us on Twitter. You can find me, I know, on my law firm's website, Gable Gottwalls. If there's follow-up questions we couldn't get to today, happy to help, happy to engage with you. This topic is too important to not have continuing conversations. Thank you for the good work that you're doing. Madison, how do people find you?
Thank you so much. I feel like I'm Vanna White. So you guys can find me on LinkedIn, of course, or please feel free to reach out. My email is very easy, madison@criticalthought.com. And I hope to hear from you all in any ways that we can help from a understanding of Wells notices, compliance, or anything that we've talked about today.
All right. Thank you guys very much.
Bye, Trent. Have a good one.